Andrea, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Would you be willing to share a few facts and details about you and how you found astrology?
Hi, Leila. It's a pleasure to be here. I have been studying astrology uh, as an amateur astrologist for a little over 10 years. I started studying with a few different modern astrologers, but recently, over the last 2 years, I have been studying Hellenistic astrology, which is the study of ancient astrology when it really first began with the Greeks and the Romans.
Wow.
Um, yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. Um, I started getting interested in astrology um, because I started getting into a lot of spiritual studies. I was doing a lot of yoga. I studied with a local person in intuition, just dabbling into different intuitive studies. And she sent me a book that kind of changed my life. And it was just the real basics of astrology. And since that book, I just kept going. So it's been a real adventure.
So you know I have to ask, do you recall the name of this book?
Um, it was, I guess, uh,
Is
Jan
it?
Spiller's. It was Jan Spiller's nodes book. So it's
Okay.
the nodes of the moon,
Okay.
and I think it was her book, and I don't think I ever gave it back to her.
Well, that's how you know it was a good book. We can drop that in the comment section below. I can find it online and drop it. I just know that people are probably going to ask what book it was that kind of really turned you on and made you interested in astrology. Now, out of curiosity, do you feel like astrology and yoga align nicely?
Yes, I think that there's the same kind of intuition and the same time kind of going inward um, when you're a practicing yogi and when you're a practicing astrologer. So it's the same energy, it's the same intuition. You're tapping into the same cosmic, universal energy, and you're speaking a very universal language. So, the symbols of astrology are, a language in and of themselves. So once you learn it, things kind of start tying together in a really spiritual way. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I can definitely understand that from the intuitive side. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. So I know tonight you really wanted to put an emphasis on Mars. Do you want to start by sharing the characteristics of Mars?
Sure. Um, yeah, I really wanted to focus this talk tonight on how Mars has transitioned from October, the beginning of October, and where it's going the end of November and
Okay.
into December, early December. Um, and, we all have an understanding about Mars. It's probably the planet that everybody kind of gets in some way. I think because, um, we all kind of tap into the Mars energy. Um, and, if I asked you, Liilo, what you identify Mars with, what would you say?
Okay, I have a very limited knowledge, but I would associate it with male, and I would associate it with more of the word that's coming to me is aggressive, but I don't know that that's necessarily what I mean as much as like something that's really like at the forefront. You can't miss it, that type of energy. Is that anywhere close
Yeah.
to Mars?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And really it's instinctual, right? Like that feeling is very instinctual and it's very human.
Mm.
Um, and Mars gets a bad rap. Uh, it's identified with the war planet. The god of war was Mars, and and it's very male aggressive, associated with conflict, hostility, anger, fighting, cutting. These are all very Marsian qualities. But Mars is associated with two different signs. One is Aries, and Mars in that sign, we say that it's in its domicile. Mars is in its domicile in Aries in Hellenistic astrology. And there it's, very fire, very young. It's very masculine, right? Very aggressive. But it also lives in the sign of Scorpio, right? Where that's more of a watery, feminine version of Mars. And so here we have, a complex dance that this planet does. There's this dual quality that Mars shares. And, that's really a big theme with what's been going on with everybody's conscious awareness over the last couple of months, the duality of humanity. So that's why I kind of wanted to talk about Mars, because it's really driving this thing that's going on right now on the planet. And so, Mars, there's all this connotation negatively, but there's also the fact that Mars is the basis of desire. It's the basis of ambition and drive and focus and conviction and passion, right? And these don't necessarily have to be, negative, angry male qualities, So that's what I really like people to keep in mind when we're talking about every planet, is that there's this balance, right? This yin yang. I don't want to say good, bad, but male, female, black, white aspect that astrology is constantly dabbling in. So just to bring that up, that Mars isn't always a bad thing. We always need a good kick in the butt, and that's where Mars comes in.
Well, and I love the two faces that you presented. I don't know that I ever understood that fully, that each planet has a masculine and a feminine side of it.
Mhm.
And it's really beautiful, but it's also very complex and makes it much more personable and relatable to what we experience every day, because nothing is ever just black or white. It's a very complex marriage between different energies, different personalities, and different attributes. So I love that. Thank you for explaining that. So when we talk about Mars and we talk about how it's played out in October and November, um, where is that taking us, I guess? Do you want to start back when it started in October and work our way through?
Yeah. So Mars was in Libra, as you recall, in October, before it moved into Scorpio. And Mars in Libra was a challenge of balance. If you know Libra, it's the scales, right?
Mhm.
And so we found ourselves kind of like trying to figure out where balance was, where justice was, especially when it came to the conflict in Israel. And we're still reeling from that. I don't want to focus on that too much tonight, but I did want to mention that when the war in Israel broke out, Mars was traveling through Libra, and it was square to Pluto. And Pluto is a planet of it's always the birth, death, and transformation. That's usually how it's explained. But Pluto can be this force that drives things, in a direction either way. It pushes things over the edge, really. And so I think when we were dealing with Mars square Pluto, we saw an unrest of a global magnitude that we haven't seen in a very long time.
Mm.
And so, we're still, dealing with this energy, as a planet, as humanity as a whole. We're still dealing with that energy. And then as Mars progressed through October, it came into the sign of Scorpio. And when Mars is in its own domicile, which it is in Scorpio, it kind of picks up strength. It kind of finds its ground and digs its heels in. And so, we all had this collective edginess, I think, that we carried in from the middle of October and into the beginning of November. But as we were doing that, as we were crossing kind of into the month of November, we experienced a lunar eclipse on October 28th.
Mm.
Um, I don't know about you, but it pretty much knocked me for a loop because, when we're dealing with eclipses, that's big energy as it is. Even though this was a partial lunar eclipse, it was the last eclipse in Taurus and Scorpio. So, and really the nodes of the moon have already gone into Aries and Libra. So we were experiencing this eclipse that was really out of whack. Okay, so the sun and the moon are opposite during the full moon cycle, and the nodes have already shifted. So we're going into an eclipse pattern where it's in Aries and Libra, but this was the last eclipse of this cycle that has gone on for a couple of years.
Yeah,
And
I
so,
could definitely feel it. It was a doozy. Yeah.
yeah, it was the extra oomph, really, that was that, and the fact that things were just so off kilter with the energy there. Um, and really, that's again, that concept of duality really hit home because, if you look at the signs that this eclipse was in, we had Taurus and we had Scorpio, and they sit opposite each other on a chart, on like a natal birth chart. And the sign of Taurus, I mean, everybody knows, they have a concept of what Taurus is. If that's your sun sign, then, you identify with the bull and, all the characteristics of Taurus with the very grounding, earthy energy. Taurians can be very stubborn. I'm a Taurus sun, by the way. So I identify with that very well. But then there's Scorpio on the other side, and in a way, they're contra indicators of the same energy. So Taurus is, to me anyway, it's an outward energy. It's ruled by Venus, and so it's very outward. It's very flashy, very aesthetically pleasing. Taurians like good food and beautiful paintings, and that quality of life that is like eye candy. That's all about Taurus. And Scorpio is it's that inward aspect where you're drawing in energy of like life and death. It's very much kind of where Taurians are very life loving. Scorpios focus on, well, maybe it's, that change, that edge of life. And so it really, if you explain the duality of the signs, for Taurians, it's like Beauty and the Beast. Okay. It's like, there's the bull, but there's also, the beast, the minotaur, what is beautiful about life, but what is really ugly, and humans they can be beautiful and they can also be brutal and grotesque, and we all carry that around with us as humans. And the same thing goes with Scorpio. Scorpio, it conveys this power. It conveys, this assertion, this dominance. But really on the underside of Scorpio is this massive vulnerability. And if you've ever loved a Scorpio, and we probably all have, you know how vulnerable they can be, and they hide it beneath the surface. And it's all very subterranean with them. So this is what I'm saying. This theme that's been going on with Mars is this duality, and that eclipse really played into the whole dynamic there very, very powerfully. So yeah, we had that, and then we came out of that whole cycle. And frankly, this past week we had a new moon, and I really think that the energy from a full moon to a new moon kind of like lags into, and they blend, like they lag into each other, and they exchange energy. So it's only a couple of weeks in between these events, but they really do kind of like, this energy lingers, especially with eclipse energies. They do carry forward. So I still think we're kind of like experiencing that in a way. But then we got into November, and the planet Saturn stationed direct on November 4th. And Saturn has been retrograding since it first entered Pisces in March of this year. So Saturn stationing direct in Pisces was kind of like a redo. So this energy with the eclipse was kind of like, the end of the cycle, the end of this lunar eclipse cycle. And then this Saturn stationing direct was a redo, and kind of like a going back and playing the same thing over again for wherever you were in March. The early part of this year is kind of like the same theme that we're kind of having to relive with Saturn gearing back up and moving forward again in its momentum. So again, it's like this stalling, ending, how do we move forward out of this crazy energy that's been going on with Mars? And as we progress through November, I really think that and here's the other thing, is that the Sun and Mars are getting closer and closer together. So they're kind of like within a 3-degree orb, meaning they're like basically right up against each other as they move through the beginning of November. And now we're in the middle of the month, and we just went through a couple days ago a new moon. That's where the Sun and the Moon are conjunct. And this was interesting because, here's Mars, this energy that's like kind of pushing and prodding you to move forward. And this, it's very kind of like, it's like tugging at you, this nagging kind of energy that's like at your heels, forcing you to like keep going, basically. And then we had this new moon opposite Uranus, which is a planet that it's an outer planet. It's not a personal planet, so it has more of an influence in the collective. So all the outer planets have a way of working our energies on a very collective, generational level. And so here, this planet of like intense creativity, uniqueness, energy is opposite the Sun and Mars. And so, there's a couple different things that could play out with that energy, right? One of which is like an aha moment, like whatever was challenging you through the whole cycle of October, and maybe even earlier, because we had this Saturn retrograde energy, and now it's kind of being pushed forward. We're having to relive the same cycle, the same pattern. But here, maybe something clicks in your mind. This Uranus comes in and says, oh, wow, I didn't really look at that the same before. Like, well, that makes a lot of sense. This is why it happened. Like, oh, yeah, okay, now I get it, right? That's what this Uranus energy kind of plays in with the last new moon. And so there's that, but there could also be like you just having this impulse to do something that's really risky, right? Like it defies logic, but you just do it anyway, you know. Then, the outcome of that would be not aha, it would be, oh my God, what did I just do? So then there's this polarity, this duality again. And like, and it depends on where these planets are in your birth chart. If these planets are transiting in like certain places in your chart that affect these themes in your life, then like say the first house, which is if you look at a natal chart, the first house is your most personal house, the house all about you. It's where the ascendant is. If there's any of these planets in your first house, and you're really feeling the effects of this. So it all depends on what you're bringing, what you're carrying into these situations. But the outcome of this could be clarity. It could be remorse, the opposite ends of the spectrum. It could be triggering trauma. You could be feeling the effects of something that happened to you, in your distant past, or, maybe something that happened to you earlier this year. So it's just, facing this energy of Mars that's like kind of driving the ship right now. But I've found all of that, really fascinating, how things just kept shifting and moving, this constant dual energy, and this moving back and forth with it. Um,
And just for a moment here,
yeah,
the new moon was on the 13th, right?
yes,
Yes. Okay. So we're filming this on the 15th, and it'll probably go up on YouTube a couple days from now. So the new moon is the energy of the new moon is fairly new, and we're
yes,
still moving through it as we're filming this.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, like I said, whenever there's an aspect of the luminaries, the sun and the moon, whether they're conjunct or whether they're opposite, um, we feel those effects. We carry them forward. And it really does play into not only our subconscious, but it also plays into, you know, the things that we can actually intrinsically feel, like the tide, you know. Um, this is real stuff. Um, it's not made up. The sun and the moon dance around each other and definitely play a role in how we feel. So yeah. Which kind of brings me to the next thing, which is the Sun Mars Cazimi, which is going to happen on November 18th, which is Mars totally combusting into the sun, not like literally, because basically the sun and Mars are like distance apart,
Mm.
but um the ancient astrologers would say, whenever Mars makes a conjunction with the sun, it's it's within the flames. It burns up, it combusts, it's a cazimi, completely blows up, and the whole process starts all over again, right? It's the rebirth of the planet. um, and so we're getting a brand new fresh start, and it's a really potent, powerful time. It's total new beginnings, reconstruction, and it's going to once again give us another point of reference to kind of get scrubbed clean and start over again. But still, Mars is making its influence with the sun, and it's going to keep driving us forward. And so that kind of catapults us into next week and the week of Thanksgiving. And, everybody's going to be busy touching base, going home, regrouping, um, reconnecting. The heart fires are going to be kindling. And, some people love Thanksgiving and some people absolutely hate Thanksgiving. Uh, you know, but I really think that this Thanksgiving, this energy that's kind of moving us forward, um, we're we're kind of transforming into Sagittarius. So we're moving out of Scorpio and into Sagittarius, and that brings a whole different light of the sun. So the sun's going to be affected by the planet Jupiter because that's the planet that rules Sagittarius, and it gives us this like expanding energy. Like it's not quite so like focused and driven with the Scorpio Mars and that dark aspect, that going in and the vulnerability. It immediately lifts and becomes much lighter, and that's really the influence that Jupiter has overall. It's a much lighter vibe, a much easier feeling. And so when we're dealing with friends, family, and the start of the holidays, going into a much lighter um, energy is definitely welcoming. So that's definitely good. uh, but I will say that Mars is going to square Saturn on November 25th. So that, if you're home for Thanksgiving, there's going to be a little edge, a little frustration for a couple of days. Maybe, at the end of that weekend. So, that puts a little slowness to our catapult into December and the Christmas holidays, but it's not going to last. It's going to burn up and move on. So that's really not going to put too much of a cramp in our plans. And then right after that we have the full moon in Gemini and the sun in Sag, which oh my gosh, that's like a whole different vibe, right? So moon in Gemini, a lot more communicative, a lot more open, a lot less closed off, a lot less, cloaking, the secrets and keeping things under control because, there's that feeling of a pressure cooker that's just about to blow. I really think that, as we move into December and this new lunar cycle, things are definitely gonna to come out the other side with a lot better ability to just make that connection. Yeah, it's going to be much lighter.
What
So,
is our date of the Kazemi?
oh, the Kazemi is November 18th. So
Okay.
in a couple of days,
Okay.
maybe, yeah, maybe the date this gets aired, I'm not sure. But we are, at this point, the middle of November, we're going to be feeling that. I mean, it's the height of Kazemi on the 18th, but the sun and Mars are going to take some time to move away from each other. And so we'll be feeling it all week for sure.
Yeah, and what I think is kind of fascinating is, at least on my end, not knowing anything about astrology, I can confirm from an intuitive side that everything that you described from moving through October into November till now is very much at the forefront for intuitives, especially highly intuitive. So definitely felt that confusion in October and feeling like, we just couldn't get a handle on the patterns and what was happening and what was going to happen. And then we went into this phase where we felt like we had already done this, but it was happening again. But now it was happening in a more defined way with more proactivity. And then we definitely hit that aha moment Um, I hit it a couple days ago, and I know a couple other intuitives in the community were starting to hit it as well, where all of the sudden the last few weeks started to make sense. Excuse me. So I totally, even though I don't understand the depths of astrological wisdom that you have, that description matches totally with what we were experiencing intuitively. The other thing that I find really fascinating is there's a whole block of my community, a whole portion of my community that does grid work, which is dealing with the matrix or the energy grid. And what is really interesting with that is that for months now, we've been really challenged with duality on the grid and really at the forefront and being almost put in positions of having to choose sides, which really has never happened before and is very challenging for everyone, but especially the kiddos and teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also interesting that you brought that up, and that is such a theme right now, and has
Mm-hmm.
been a theme now, really throughout September and October. It was a theme for us, and really bringing that to the forefront and to our awareness. So I find
Mm-hmm.
that fascinating as well.
Yeah, it really culminated at the end of the month of October with that eclipse. It really was the pinnacle of that energy.
Yeah.
Yeah, loud and clear.
And now we're moving into almost like you said, expanded. And what came to me as you were describing that is maybe a little bit of breathing room for a hot second, like being
Yeah,
able to take a deep breath for whatever's next. I'm
yeah,
always looking for those moments.
yeah. Maybe it's not quite so defensive. Like I feel personally that I've had to take like this posture of having my guard up, um, not being able to like show my vulnerability, my soft side, the real me, my truth. And I hope that we can all just like lift that weight, that heavy, dank coat that's been like thrown over us. Yeah, and I really hope I'm praying for peace, and I really hope that we can come out of the global situation as fast as we can. We can like do something about this, but what we can all do on a personal level is just to be that rock, to be that guiding force for people that need us to be that person for them, even though we may feel like we aren't that person. We have to keep holding everything up because it really does. It rests on our shoulders,
Yeah, it gets
and
heavy after a while.
it does.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
even as a community, it gets heavy after a while.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
So there's some good news. We're going to turn the corner a little bit.
Good, good. And I do have a question for you, and you might not be able to answer it. But as you were speaking and you were describing what's ahead now with the rest of November, what's kind of interesting is from uh, an intuitive side, I kind of got the feeling that the edge that you mentioned for intuitives might start on the 20th. Um, the astrologer I worked with previously always described like a bell curve or a cycle to some of the energies where it grows and then it descends or releases back out. And um, one of the things or one of the messages that I got in terms of that shift that may be starting on the 20th, or the shift that you mentioned with a little bit of edge, is the possibility of seeing more future oriented themes, knowing where we're going to be going. And I'm just curious, do you feel like that kind of fits in line with that expansive energy where we're able to take a breath? Like, do you see anything astrologically where we could get insights as to where we're going to go? Is that part of the expansive? Um, and if you can't answer it, it's okay.
I would have to look at where Jupiter is, and what is aspecting with Jupiter. That's going to be really the key. And I haven't really looked that closely into what's going to be going
Is,
on.
is Jupiter more of a future-oriented planet?
Um, future, um, time space continuum future, or
Okay, well, this is me asking out of curiosity now more than anything. But no, why Jupiter? Let me ask it that way. Why
why
Jupiter?
Jupiter? Um, well, I it's the time of the year. So because astrology is based on the cycles of the sun, when we're coming into Sagittarius, and the understanding in Hellenistic astrology is, um, the reason Jupiter is associated with Sagittarius is because, it's the time of the solstice. It's the time when, you know, um, the darkness is prevailing, right? The days get shorter, um, the nights get longer, and we are in that, kind of hunker down mode. And um, Jupiter is kind of like the planet that captures the energy of that time frame where we're longing for the spring, right? Yes, we're looking into the future for the next growing season, and we're planning. We're figuring out what our crops are going to be. Um, we are taking stock in what we have, and we're just waiting and planning for the next cycle.
What we're going
So,
to do in hibernation?
right, exactly. And so, yeah, it is very much like a look forward, but it's a hope. It's like a a very, light, airy, um, wispy desire, to get through the winter, and see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's kind of how I look, at solstice and that time of year when we're all inside, we're all like stuck with each other again. Here we are, it's dark. What are we gonna do? We've got 3 more months to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, it very much is. It captures that that opportunity, and that, the light that we all want to see come back again.
Okay.
So I don't know if that explained what you were after, but it kind of did.
It kind of did. Yeah, it definitely kind of did. And I didn't know that I was looking for a specific answer because I really was just curious, if off the top of your head you could see that evolving. And that was more just me looking to see if the stars could align with my own intuitive hits. I think one of the things that's going to be really interesting is you put the emphasis on the 25th, whereas I was more putting the emphasis on the 20th. So, one of the things that I'm kind of excited to see is who in the community feels that edge uh, sooner versus later. And I'm curious. I always find that stuff fascinating. Who's kind of at the forefront, if you will, of receiving the energy versus who's kind of receiving it last. So I don't think I was necessarily looking for a specific answer. It was more me just being curious
Yeah.
and seeing what I would get. Um, so, is there anything else you would like to share, um, or anything else you would like to share about Mars or December, anything you feel like you would like to add to our conversation?
Um, no, I feel like this was a really cool deep dive for me to do. It's interesting because I've seen a lot of other astrologers online focus on this very topic. Um, and I really tried not to pay attention to what they were saying because I didn't want them to influence my whole uh, my thought process on this. So now I'm going to go back and binge on everybody else's podcast.
That's
But
okay. I do the same thing with intuitives. I kind of try to get my own read so that I know it's coming from my authentic place, and then I go back through and listen to different intuitives or read their different blogs and stuff like that once I feel like I've got a real stable sense of what's happening. So I totally get that, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
yeah. And I don't know if you could find out if there are any topics that anybody wants to delve into next for our next talk. That would be awesome.
Yeah, so anyone in the community that has a topic that you would like Andrea and I to discuss a little bit more, you're welcome to email me. I will include the email down below, or you can leave a comment below. And before I let Andrea go, I'm going to also let her give her contact information. But you can also visit TriLiaOnline.com. There's a monthly forecast there, and there's also an option to leave comments on that page as well. Andrea is really joining us and our community to put focus on specific topics or transits and help us all to learn and understand a little bit more when it comes to astrology. And so anything that anyone has an interest in or is curious about, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll find time to hopefully discuss it a little bit more in depth. Andrea, would you like to share your contact information in case people would like to get a hold of you?
Absolutely. It is AFINN 5555. That's four fives at gmail.com.
And I will also include that below so you can also see it written out. And do you have a website yet or just
I
email?
don't,
Just email.
just email.
Okay. All right. And so you're also welcome to contact Andrea if you would like to ask more questions, or if you'd like to send her a topic or a curiosity that you're interested in as well. And next month, we will also have another astrologer joining us. I'm really excited. And she's got a lot of energy, and be on the lookout for YouTubes and emails with her. She's going to be helping with the monthly forecast, and Andrea will be joining us for our special deep dives into certain transits and topics. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you, Ian.
Have a beautiful Thanksgiving.
You too. Thank you so much for having me. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you.